China just brought a luxury EV to America. Nobody expected that costs half what German brands charge. 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. A 35-inch digital dashboard, 4 LiDAR sensors, and a starting price that's a fraction of what you'd pay for a comparable BMW or Mercedes. And it's already here in North America. How did China go from building cheap, functional cars to luxury sedans that directly compete with the best Germany has to offer? For most of the 2000s, the conversation around Chinese cars followed a predictable script where they were affordable and functional and did the job without drawing attention. And if you wanted something premium with real engineering ambition behind it, you looked to Germany or Japan or America, because that's just how the industry worked, and most people assumed it would keep working that way for a long time. Industries don't stay frozen though, and what's been happening in the Chinese electric vehicle space over the last several years isn't a slow shift, but more like a pressure cooker that's been building heat for years and is now releasing everything at once, with new manufacturers appearing and new technology getting deployed and new design languages emerging and completely new ideas about what a car should even feel like from the inside. The AVATR 12 sits at the sharp end of all of that transformation as a car that refuses to play by the old rules, and it's the product of a partnership between 3 companies that each brings something specific to the table and decided to build something aimed at the absolute top of the market rather than the comfortable middle. Changan is one of China's most established automakers, with decades of manufacturing experience and the industrial capacity to build vehicles at serious scale. CATL makes battery technology for a significant chunk of the world's electric vehicles and supplies cells to Tesla and BMW and Mercedes and Volkswagen and basically everyone who builds EVs at volume. Huawei brings the same technology expertise that made them a global leader in smartphones and telecommunications and consumer electronics. When those 3 decided to build a luxury electric sedan together, they weren't aiming for the budget segment where Chinese manufacturers had already proven themselves, or the mass market where volume matters most, but were targeting the same buyers who would normally walk into a BMW showroom or a Mercedes dealership expecting to spend 6 figures on their next car. And what they built looks like nothing those dealerships are currently selling. The first thing people notice about the AVATR 12 is a shape that refuses to be ordinary. Because design in the car world is one of those things where you either feel it immediately or you don't, and no amount of technical explanation substitutes for that first visual impression. The car stretches to 5,020 millimeters in length with a wheelbase of 3,020 millimeters, which puts it longer than a BMW 5 Series and right in the same territory as a Mercedes-Benz EQE in terms of serious full-size luxury sedan proportions. But because of the way the AVATR 12 is shaped, it doesn't carry its size the way those cars do. Instead of the upright formal stance of a traditional luxury sedan, this car sits low and wide with a fastback roofline that flows in one unbroken line from the roof all the way down to the tail, and it looks like something that's moving even when it's standing still. The front throws out the traditional grille entirely, and in its place you get a clean, sculpted face dominated by razor-thin LED headlights that cut across the nose like glowing blades, and during the day, they look aggressive and sharp. While at night, pulling up behind this car at a traffic light creates a genuine double take because it doesn't look like a car, but looks like something that drove in from about a decade ahead. The rear is where the design does something nobody expected by removing the traditional rear window entirely and replacing it with a camera system that feeds to screens inside the cabin, with no glass separating the cabin from the trunk. What you get instead is this perfectly uninterrupted smooth rear profile that looks almost architectural in how clean and deliberate it appears. When you first hear about removing the rear window, it sounds like a gimmick or a styling trick that sacrifices function for form. But when you see it in person and understand how the camera system works, it just looks inevitable, like this was obviously always the right way to do it. And everyone else just hadn't gotten there yet, because they were too committed to doing things the traditional way. The camera feeds to a high-definition screen where the rear-view mirror would normally sit, and the image quality is better than what you'd see through actual glass on a rainy night, or when the sun is directly behind you, so it's not just different, but actually better for visibility in difficult conditions. Add in the frameless doors and the muscular rear haunches and the enormous wheels, and what you have is a car that doesn't look like it's trying to compete with European luxury sedans, but looks like it has already moved past them and is waiting for everyone else to catch up. The exterior makes a statement on its own, but opening the door is where most luxury cars either deliver on that promise or reveal themselves as all show and no substance. That sense of being ahead continues the moment you open the door, because there's a particular feeling you get stepping into a car that was designed by people who were genuinely excited about what they were building. And the AVATR 12 has that feeling from the moment you sit down. Stretching across the full width of the dashboard is a single continuous digital display running 35.4 inches from one side to the other, where navigation and speed and media and driving information all appear in one seamless, beautifully rendered interface. Most premium German dashboards, which are genuinely excellent, feel busy and compartmentalized by comparison, while this feels unified and intentional, like someone actually thought about how a human being looks at information while driving and then designed around that. Below that sits a large central touchscreen running Huawei's operating system. And if you've ever used a flagship Huawei smartphone and been impressed by how smooth and responsive it felt, this is that experience scaled up and built into the center console of a car, where climate and driving modes and navigation and media all get handled through an interface that responds instantly and feels genuinely intuitive. Voice commands work the way you actually hope they will, rather than the way they usually do. And because the car receives over-the-air software updates, it doesn't stay frozen at the version it was when it left the factory, but improves over time the way the best consumer technology does. The seats are wrapped in premium leather, with heating and ventilation and massage functions across all positions. And that massive 3,020mm wheelbase does something very specific for rear passengers by giving them the kind of legroom that makes long journeys genuinely comfortable, rather than something to endure. The panoramic glass roof floods the whole cabin with natural light, which makes the interior feel even bigger than it already is. And sitting in the back of the AVATR 12, you start asking yourself whether this car is competing with the Mercedes E-Class, or whether it quietly has its sights set on the S-Class. Luxury sedans with impressive interiors are nothing new, but most of them sacrifice performance to deliver that comfort. And that's where the AVATR 12 breaks from what you expect a car like this to be. The dual-motor all-wheel drive setup produces around 578 horsepower with torque figures sitting around 650 Newton-meters, and the 0 to 60 sprint takes roughly 3.8 seconds. That's not sedan performance, but sports car performance wearing a business suit and carrying luggage for a long weekend. And it happens in a large, fully loaded 4-door luxury sedan with massage seats and a 35-inch dashboard. The battery pack is a 94.5 kilowatt-hour unit built by CATL using their latest cell technology. And the car's 800-volt electrical architecture means charging happens at a pace that's genuinely practical, where adding hundreds of kilometers of range takes the time it takes to have a proper coffee stop, rather than requiring an extended meal break. The total range on a full charge can reach around 700 kilometers under standard testing conditions, which in real-world terms means driving from Toronto to Montreal with meaningful range left over and no anxiety about where the next charger is. But pure performance is only part of what makes this car technically interesting, because the AVATR 12 also carries one of the most sophisticated driver assistance setups you'll find in any production vehicle right now, with multiple cameras and radar sensors and 4 separate LiDAR units working together through Huawei's ADS system. LiDAR works by firing laser pulses in every direction and using the returning signals to build a precise real-time map of everything around the vehicle. And 4 of them means the car has essentially no blind spots, while the system supports advanced highway driving assistance and automatic lane changes, and intelligent parking, all handled with a level of smoothness and precision that makes it feel less like a driving aid and more like a genuinely capable co-pilot. With close to 600 horsepower available the moment you press the accelerator, having that level of intelligence watching the road alongside you isn't optional, but exactly what you want. A car with these specifications from a German or American manufacturer would come with a price tag that reflects every bit of that technology and performance. And that's where the AVATR 12 stops being just impressive and becomes something that fundamentally changes the conversation. When you take everything described above, and imagine a European or American manufacturer building it with the design studio investment and the Huawei-level software development and the quad LiDAR system and the 800-volt architecture and the premium interior and the sub-4-second acceleration. You would be looking at a price tag somewhere north of 80 to 100,000 US dollars at minimum, and probably more for the top configuration. The AVATR 12 starts at the equivalent of roughly 37,000 US dollars in its home market, and the fully loaded top trim sits at around 59,000 US dollars. For everything, this car is including the quad LiDAR and the massage seats and Huawei's full technology suite, and the performance that embarrasses dedicated sports sedans. That price reflects the Chinese domestic market, where manufacturing costs are lower and supply chains are more integrated. And bringing a vehicle like this into markets like Canada or the United States involves costs that change the equation significantly through import tariffs that can add thousands to the base price, and regulatory compliance requirements that demand expensive modifications and local distribution networks that need to be built from scratch, and after-sales infrastructure, including service centers and parts availability, that all add to the final cost. The final number for a North American buyer would definitely be higher than that Chinese domestic base price, possibly significantly higher depending on how the distribution gets structured. But the underlying point stands regardless of where the final sticker price lands. What matters here isn't the exact dollar amount, but what becomes possible when a manufacturer can deliver this level of technology and this level of design refinement and this level of performance for this kind of base cost structure, because it resets the expectations of what a car at any given price point should be able to offer to buyers. If you can build a car with quad LiDAR and 578 horsepower and massage seats and a 35-inch dashboard for $60,000, then suddenly a $90,000 German sedan that offers less technology starts looking like it's not offering good value. And that's the thing that has established luxury brands genuinely thinking hard right now about their pricing strategies and their feature sets and their entire value propositions. And the AVATR 12 isn't an isolated case, but part of a pattern that's been playing out across industry after industry for the past 2 decades. The AVATR 12 is a remarkable car, but the more important thing it represents is a direction that shows you where things are heading and how quickly that journey is moving. A few years ago, describing a Chinese luxury electric sedan as a credible rival to BMW and Mercedes and Tesla in the same breath would have sounded like an overclaim. But today, you can walk through the AVATR 12 specification sheet line by line and find it matching or exceeding those cars in category after category. The electric vehicle era was always going to be a reset moment for the auto industry, because when the fundamental architecture of a vehicle changes, the advantages built up over decades of refining internal combustion engines don't automatically transfer, and new players can enter with no legacy costs and no model lines to protect and no reason to do things the way they've always been done. The AVATR 12 is what happens when that freedom is used well. And the really compelling part of this story isn't that one impressive car was built, but that this is not a one-off, but part of a broader wave of engineering ambition that's producing results in real vehicles that real people can buy. China went from buying tunnel boring machines from Germany 20 years ago to controlling 70% of the global market today. And they went from buying construction equipment from Europe and Japan to building the most advanced machines on Earth that are now being exported back to the countries that used to supply them. And now they're going from building cheap, functional cars that nobody took seriously to luxury sedans that compete directly with the best Germany has to offer on technology and performance and design. The pattern is consistent across multiple industries, and the automotive sector is simply the latest place where that transformation is playing out in real time, with real products that are already here and available to buy, rather than concepts that might arrive someday or promises about future capabilities. For buyers in North America, the AVATR 12 represents something genuinely new in the market, because it's not asking you to compromise on luxury or technology or performance in exchange for a lower price, but is delivering all three at a cost structure that fundamentally changes the value equation. The competition in the premium electric vehicle space is about to become genuinely fascinating to watch, and the question isn't whether Chinese manufacturers can compete at the top end anymore, because they're already there. The question is, What happens when they keep moving forward and the technology gap keeps growing? What do you think? Drop your answer in the comments. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching.